Hello and welcome to this video on writing in detail about 1984. So you're writing an essay on one of the titles and you've got to show a really detailed knowledge of the text, partly from how much of it you can refer to really quickly, different bits from different areas, partly going really deeply into an episode. So I've picked a part of chapter 6 to show you what I mean. And you must write about as many narrative methods as you can. So let's have a look. So if you find it, start the paragraph starting when he'd gone with that woman. So I think he's talking about a prostitute here. When he'd gone with that woman, it had been his first lapse in 2 years or thereabouts. Consorting with prostitutes was forbidden, of course, but it was one of those rules you could occasionally nerve yourself to break. It was dangerous, but it was not a life and death matter. To be caught with a prostitute might mean 5 years in a forced labour camp, not more, if you'd committed no other offence. And it was easy enough, provided you could avoid being caught in the act. The poorer quarters swarmed with women who were ready to sell themselves. Some could even be purchased for a bottle of gin, which the proles were not supposed to drink. Tacitly, the party was even inclined to encourage prostitution as an outlet for instincts which couldn't altogether be suppressed. Mere debauchery didn't matter very much, so long as it was furtive and joyless and only involved the women of a submerged and despised class. The unforgivable crime was promiscuity between party members. But though this was one of the crimes that the accused in the Great Purges invariably confessed to, it was difficult to imagine any such thing actually happening. So from that paragraph, you might write about the narrator. It's not a first-person narrator, it's a third-person narrator, but very closely allied to Winston's viewpoint. You'd call it focused on Winston's viewpoint. So just let me grab a pen. So it was one of those rules you could occasionally nerve yourself to break. So that's this idea of a man speaking to men, assuming a male reader here. To be caught with a prostitute might mean blah blah blah, not more, might mean 5 years, not more if you had committed no other sense. It's who is this you? And I'm suggesting to you it's an assumed male reader. It's not really talking to women readers. And partly lines like this as well. The poorer quarters swarmed with women who were ready to sell themselves. So dehumanizing them, swarming with women, and then being ready to sell themselves. Desperate. We don't see it from the women's point of view, obviously. We don't see their desperations and their addictions and their childhoods. They are just ready to sell themselves. So you've got a lot of points here about an assumed male reader, understand that is being told this story of 1984, and assumed male experience and no exploration of female experience with this swarming, this animal, this other, and then being ready to sell themselves. So that's him thinking about, and the narrator explaining to you about the situation with prostitutes. This is just a bit of plot, this next paragraph. So he's thinking about his having sex with a prostitute, and then he thought again of Katharine. It must be 9, 10, nearly 11 years since they'd parted. It was curious how seldom he thought of her. For days at a time he was incapable of forgetting he'd ever been married. They'd only been together for about 15 months. The party didn't permit divorce, but it rather encouraged separation in cases where there were no children. So that's a plot line. And then we have very little in the novel. I mean, this makes it seem like it's in the novel. This is about it, just about it, for Katharine. It was a tall, fair-haired girl, very straight, with splendid movements. She had a bold, aquiline face, a face that one might have called noble, until one discovered there was as nearly as possible nothing behind it. Very early in her married life, he had decided, though perhaps it was only that he knew her more intimately than he knew most people, that she had without exception the most stupid, vulgar, empty-mind he'd ever encountered. She'd not a thought in her head that wasn't a slogan, and there was no imbecility, absolutely none, that she was not capable of swallowing if the party handed it out to her. The human soundtrack, he nicknamed her in his own mind. Yet he could have endured living with her if it had not been for just one thing, sex. So this is our description of Katharine from Winston's point of view. And I'm pointing out to you here that we have physical descriptions. So it starts off with what she looks like physically, and then it goes on to tell us that she has got nothing in her mind, and she's the most stupid, vulgar, empty mind he'd ever encountered. And so that's all from his point of view, and we're given nothing to counter that with. So a physical description of her, and then a dismissal of any personality or personhood in her. And then we've got the fact that he could have borne living with her, he just lived with this stupid person apart from the sex. As soon as he touched her, she seemed to wince and stiffen. To embrace her was like embracing a jointed wooden image. And what was strange was that even when she was clasping him against her, he had the feeling she was simultaneously pushing him away with all her strength. The rigidity of her muscles managed to convey that impression. She would lie there with shut eyes, neither resisting nor cooperating, but submitting. It was extraordinarily embarrassing and after a while horrible. But even then he could have borne living with her if it had been agreed that they should remain celibate, celibate meaning not having sex. So this is a description of sex with her, and he had the feeling. So he doesn't know what's going on with her, but he's got the feeling. It's all from Winston's viewpoint here. So simultaneously pushing him away as well as clasping her to him. She would lie there with shut eyes. So all seen from the outside, and we're not given inside Katharine at all. And she's submitting. So he could have coped with it if he hadn't had to have sex with her, because she's so wooden and so empty and so submitting and trying to push him away. He could have coped with living with her. But curiously enough, it was Katharine who refused to have a celibate relationship. They must, she said, produce a child if they could. So the performance continued to happen once a week quite regularly, whenever it was not impossible. I think that means when she's got her period, but don't write about that. She even used to remind him of it in the morning as something which had to be done that evening and which must not be forgotten. She had two names for it. One was making a baby and the other was our duty to the party. Yes, she'd actually used that phrase. Quite soon he grew to have a feeling of positive dread when the appointed day came round. But luckily no child appeared, and in the end she agreed to give up trying, and soon afterwards they parted. So it's all Katharine who, even though the sex is awful and she quite clearly hates it, still wants to do it and calls it her duty, or their duty to the party. And if you're writing about the personal and the political, that's quite a nice quote from her, that the most personal thing maybe, whether she has sex or not, is something done for her society. So this is still the same point, that you don't really know what she's thinking, you get it through Winston's viewpoint. Actually, I'll go back. Oh, excuse me. I can't go back. I'm going to start this bit in the next video. So hopefully my things will pop up. Please subscribe to my channel, and I hope I'll put the link to the next video here.